Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we'll be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills this afternoon as they take on the Arizona Cardinals. Plus, we will be previewing key matchups and handing out our pregame superlatives. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in Bills Mafia to the Air Raid Hour Cover One pregame show. If you are listening to this right now, congratulations. You survived the NFL offseason, and we are here. It is week one, and the best week ones are when the Bills are at home week one. We get our home opener to go along with week one. Dave, what is your anxiety index scale of 1 to 10, 10 being full-blown panic mode? Where is your anxiety level right now?
This is gonna fluctuate the closer we get to game time. So like right now, I'm at a cool 3, right? But this is gonna get up to like a 7 or 8 by 12:30, 12:45. The first week of the year always brings like this just natural excitement and anxiety. And the Bills have had some pretty memorable week one games in the past, 10, 15 years. You go some on the bad side, some on the good side, right? So you just never know what's going to happen week one. It's so unpredictable. Fantasy football week one, unpredictable. Like it's just, there's so many unknowns. What teams are going to surprise? What teams are going to maybe do something in week one that ends up not being like how they are the rest of the year, right? So this is a good one for the Bills to open at home against the team that they really should have a pretty good advantage against, but that doesn't mean the anxiety levels will not be high, because they will be.
Yeah, I would say I would put it like a 6 because I think it's naturally higher week one than maybe any other week, just because there's that unknown factor that you sort of have week one. I think the only thing keeping it below a 6 or a 6 and below is just the fact that I think the Buffalo Bills should be able to control the ball on the ground this week, and that should reduce the anxiety a little bit, because I do think the Buffalo Bills will be able to dictate the line of scrimmage in this game. But again, it's week one, so by the time kickoff rolls around, definitely gonna want to take my Fitbit off, make sure my heartbeat is not being monitored over the course of this game. Looking at the weather of this game, high 50s, low 60s, and sunny at kickoff. Kind of like an October looking day in September as the Bills open it up at Highmark Stadium. The wind could play a little bit of a role here. 22-mile-an-hour wind with gusts up to 35 miles an hour. So I have a little bit of agenda pushing I want to do to start off this show, because I think anything 4th and 3 or less, especially on a windy day like today, between the 30 and the 50-yard line, should be an automatic go for it for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills should be aggressive today, and the reason, like you said, we're going to get into sort of the statistical reasons, but the weather reasons for sure. What's the confidence level in Tyler Bass at this point? Like, you'd hate to go into week one not confident in your kicker, but like maybe week one is the week where, because there's a little bit more anxiety, because maybe the demons in Tyler Bass's heads are there a little bit more prevalently than they would be otherwise. Like, why not? Because the Cardinals are going to do the same. The Cardinals are going to be super aggressive in this game. The Cardinals had the 4th most 4th down attempts of any team last year, so they're going to do that as well. So if you're the Bills, I say be aggressive in this game, and I would not mind seeing 4th and 3 or less within reasonable field position to be going for it in most cases.
Looking at some of the injuries today, the Cardinals, Joey Blount and Tip Riemann are questionable. Blount with a back injury, Riemann with an ankle injury. Out is wide receiver Xavier Worthy with an oblique injury. So for the Cardinals, the only real major possible loss here is if Tip Riemann cannot play. He is a rookie, but he does look to figure into and play a large role in their 12-13 personnel packages at the tight end position. He's probably their best run blocking tight end. So if he doesn't go today, that helps the Buffalo Bills a little bit in terms of maybe being able to stop a little bit of what the Arizona Cardinals are going to look to do on the ground. But at the same time, they were still highly successful last year on the ground without Tip Riemann as well. So there is that. On the Bills side, a late designation for Dwayne Smoot with a toe injury. He is now out. Javon Solomon, DNP all week with an oblique injury. He is out. Elevated from the practice squad, we have Cameron Klein. We have Will Clapp. Klein, that one might have turned some heads for Bills Mafia, but it probably shouldn't have, right? Obviously, people are probably like, well, why not Kingsley Jonathan? Well, Cameron Klein is a pretty good special teams player, so he's likely going to fill Casey Tuhill's role on special teams, while Casey Tuhill takes a more traditional role in the defensive end rotation with Dwayne Smoot out. It's the Will Clapp one that is really kind of like, huh? What? My wild guess is the Buffalo Bills want to make Will Clapp active week 1 so they can guarantee his contract. It was kind of like maybe a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to him. Like, hey, if you go on our practice squad, we'll call you up week 1. Make sure you're on the active roster so you can get that contract fully guaranteed. Maybe that was a way to coax him to the practice squad. That was like me spitballing, making a wild guess. And then, of course, in the comments in our Cover One group chat, Uber Hansen was just like, well, maybe the Bills just wanted a backup center that's, snapped the ball in the NFL before, because Connor McGovern is making his first start at center today.
Yeah, it could be a mixture of both, to be honest. And but I do think the Bills, knowing sort of, what happened early in the season a couple years ago with those injuries on the offensive line and kind of bumbling through that game against the Dolphins and others, right? But I think in week 1, you just want to have as many fail safes as you possibly can, given the situation. I mean, I don't expect that to become a problem, but yeah, I think if this was Mitch Morse starting at center, you probably wouldn't have seen Will Clapp with the call up. Cameron Klein, I really don't have any issue with that. My bigger concern really with this whole discussion is the late addition of Dwayne Smoot on Friday, going from full practices to DNP with this toe injury. What does that mean for him going forward beyond week 1? Because at least in my mind, and based on what we heard all throughout camp, the guy was just killing it. And I hope for his sake and for the team's sake, it's not a long-term thing for him.
All right. Transitioning now, let's start today's pregame coverage talking about the Buffalo Bills offense and the Arizona Cardinals defense. Week 1 is kind of a mystery bag, and we have some clues about what the Buffalo Bills offense could look like. Obviously, Joe Brady added maybe some of his wrinkles last year, but he was mostly running Ken Dorsey's offense. And we have all those reports from training camp about what the Buffalo Bills were sort of implementing here and there as part of their offensive identity. But what do you think we're going to see out of the offense this season from Joe Brady and co?
I think it's going to be, I don't think what you see today is necessarily going to be what you see over the course of the season. I do think that comparatively to last season, you kind of saw that transition when we went to Joe Brady from Ken Dorsey. But I think even with Joe Brady starting in week 1, I think you're going to see a little bit more of I don't want to say conservative, right? But I do think you're going to see the Bills try to establish the run game a bit more today. Then maybe they will kind of open things up as the season, progresses, as guys like Keon Coleman get more reps as a rookie. Curtis Samuel, with a new team, although familiarity with Joe Brady, it's a lot of new moving pieces to put together. So I could definitely see the Bills, at least today, coming out, trying to establish the run, making that something that they can kind of hang their hats on going forward. And against a team like the Cardinals, they should be able to do that, using Dawson Knox more potentially as a blocker. But I don't necessarily think that's going to be how it goes all year, but I could see that being how it goes just for today's game.
Yeah, I think for the totality of the season, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of 12 personnel this year. I think they're going to want to get Dawson Knox on the field. I think he's going to probably play a larger role than people think. I think some of the things that we saw in training camp was bunch and condensed formations, which we could see a ton of today, right? When trying to attack the Arizona Cardinals. Get guys like Keon Coleman and Matt Collins, closer to the line of scrimmage. Get after it in the run game. Start implementing the play action. Get Josh Allen out on some rollouts, out on some bootlegs. Use the ground game to lay the foundation for this offense. Use the running backs in the passing game. And then one of the wrinkles I'm really interested to see how much we see of today and how much exactly we're saving for the Miami Dolphins is the use of motion and getting guys in movement pre-snap, right? Guys like Curtis Samuel, getting them in space in creative ways. I think we could see portions of that throughout the entirety of this game, but I think you are really hitting home. Attacking this specific Arizona Cardinals defense might be a little different. They ran so many 3 safety packages last year. They add Dadrion Taylor Demerson in the draft this year to be that third safety to go along with Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker. You're probably going to see a heavy dose of those 3 safety packages. So in return from the Buffalo Bills, you could see a heavy dose of the running game, more so than maybe we would see in a normal week. I mean, up front, they spent some money, right? Not the biggest names in the world, but they added some veterans to stop the bleeding in their front 7 in Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones. They got Roy Lopez in the middle, who's a pretty solid plugger. On the edge, they got Zaven Collins, Dennis Gardeck, and then at linebacker, they have Kaiser White and Mac Wilson. So it's better than it was last year, but that's not a strong and not a deep, from a rotational standpoint, front 7. And the Buffalo Bills could really look to, again, and I mentioned this on Monday, maybe it's not to the level of the Cowboys game, but we just see way more running and establishing the ground game today than maybe we will see over the course of the normal weeks of a 2024 season, just based on the matchup today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Cowboys game, right? Because that's the thing that kind of comes to mind to me, and kind of projecting into what, almost an ideal outcome or an ideal, ideal way this plays out could be. I think in my head, man, if it looks similar to that Cowboys game from last year, that would be amazing. I mean, the Cardinals were the worst run defense in the league last year, 143.2 yards on the per game allowed. They were the worst third down conversion defense in the league last year, allowing 47.3%. They had the third fewest sacks in the NFL. So this was a team that really struggled to kind of get off the field, to stop the run. They allowed the second highest quarterback rating to quarterbacks last year.
I'm from Arizona, and so I watched a ton of Cardinals games. Zaven Collins is a young, fun player, but especially now with BJ Ojolari out for the season with his torn ACL, they can't get to the quarterback. They just cannot get to the quarterback. And I don't know if they made any legitimate personnel changes this year that's going to make that any easier this year for them.
Exactly. So you start running through these and you're like, okay, there's some new faces, but how much can really change in week 1 of the following season? And then you look back at last year and you say, they're one of only 5 teams who had a negative 100 or worse point differential for the entire season. So this is a team that really struggled defensively. Obviously, they had their issues on offense we're going to talk about, but defensively, you start putting these pieces to these different statistics together and looking at these games, they really struggled defensively. And so, they tried to offset that with that rushing game, but it just wasn't enough for them last year. So the Bills offensively really should be able to do what they want, dictate to the Cardinals, not let the Cardinals dictate to them. The Bills should not come out and press in this game like they appeared to have come out in that Jets game last year and pressed on offense and struggled, and Josh forced the ball. Yes, it's week 1. Anything can happen, but I mean, the formula is there for the Bills to have a very efficient, very, methodical, solid game offensively, where there should really not be any excuse for large mistakes for panic, for anything like that. If they can come out and do what they're supposed to do at home against this
Mhm.
Cardinals defense, it really is probably the single biggest matchup advantage for the Bills today is this Bills offense against the Cardinals
Yeah.
front seven that really cannot get home and really cannot stop the run.
We have Ian D coming in saying, "You guys make great content, by the way. Probably the best analysts for plays on the Bills in and out. Thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate that." And a bunch of people in here talking about, Josh Allen utilizing play action, utilizing Khalil Shakir. Charles G comes in, says Josh needs to come and play mistake-free ball, and we are good. That's sort of my next point here is, what are the expectations for Josh Allen in this first week of the season, first week without Josh Allen, or excuse me, without Stephon Diggs? Do we see the Rams opener Josh Allen, or do we see Steelers Jets opener Josh Allen? Because obviously you'd like to see something closer to that LA Rams opener Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to see something closer to that. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't upset me if you saw Josh maybe only throw the ball 25 times today. Like, I know
Mhm.
people want to come out. It's week one. They want to see Josh throw the ball around the yard. I get that. And like, you want to see him have that 300-yard, big multiple touchdown passing game. But like,
Mhm.
you might not need that, right? Like, maybe
Yeah.
you do, right? Maybe the Bills zag a bit and they say, you know what? We know the Cardinals can't stop the run. Maybe they're expecting that we're going to try to run the ball a lot more. Maybe it's a lot of play action early
Mhm.
in sort of an effort to say, hey, we're going to kind of make you think we're going to be running the ball, but we're not, and take some shots. But with the new faces, like, I feel like it should be a little bit more, let's get into a rhythm. Let's get some layups for these guys. Let's get
Yep.
them, feeling a little bit of chemistry in the first real action with Allen. And yeah,
Mhm.
maybe it's not a huge passing attempts game for him. So yes, it shouldn't ideally should not be like it was against the Steelers or the Jets, more closer to the Rams, but you might not even need to see that much. I would expect hopefully a heavy dose of James Cook and
Mhm.
Ray Davis on the ground, and even Josh maybe using his legs a little bit too. But yeah, I mean, I would say right now it's not going to be my hot take, but a hot take for me could be Josh Allen under 25 passing attempts in this game.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do think they're going to utilize the ground game, and you're going to see a more level-headed quarterback week one this season in Josh Allen than maybe you saw last year in that Jets game. And I don't know. I think I'll push back on the 25 pass attempts though, just because I think a goal for this season for Josh Allen, for Joe Brady, for the next evolution of this Buffalo Bills offense is for him to take the easy stuff, as sort of you were alluding to. So I think you're just going to see Josh maybe be more efficient in the
Mm,
underneath and having the patience to take the underneath stuff and to take the easier stuff and not wait for something to develop down the field, and just have the patience to, when you see the guy there, dump it off and get 5-6 yards, or let your running back make a play and maybe turn it into a first down. Have the patience, take the easy stuff, the stuff that Patrick Mahomes has done so well throughout his entire career. That needs to be the next evolution of Josh Allen.
yeah, I mean, that's exactly and yeah, that could end up meaning that, like, there are a
Mhm.
lot more short passes. I'm gonna go back and check. I think last year he might have only had 1 game where he had under 25 attempts. I need to
the,
fact check myself on
the
that.
the the Cowboys game, but what's
Yeah.
interesting too is just looking at this matchup. This is a great, like, get your quarterback involved in the running game type of matchup, but I don't
Mhm.
know how much the Buffalo Bills are going to be willing to do that week one with Josh Allen. But hey, maybe a couple first series, just maybe a design quarterback run. Let Josh take a shot, because we know that, like, Josh kind of likes to get hit, and it kind of pumps him up a little bit and,
Mhm.
like, gets him into the game. So maybe a design quarterback run on the first series of the game, maybe telling Josh, like, hey, it's okay, every once in a while to take off and run and utilize your legs. Last year, the Buffalo Bills hesitated and waited until midseason to unleash that part of Josh Allen's game. It literally got Ken Dorsey fired. So maybe the Buffalo Bills make a different decision to start this year. And this is a good matchup for Josh Allen to get some yards on the ground.
Oh, yeah, it's a great matchup. Like we said, Cardinals last in the league in rushing
Mhm.
defense last year, and, like, look, I mean, there's also a little bit of probably gamer here in Josh Allen, like Kyler Murray on the other side. He's gonna use his legs, and
Mhm.
that that is something that Josh Allen, it's what makes him so special is his ability, his combination of his passing and rushing abilities really makes him what he is.
Mhm.
And so I don't necessarily think it's like he doesn't want to get shown up by another guy rushing, another quarterback rushing, but he would certainly take matters into his own hands if it means it's going to get the team in an advantageous position, whether it's like off script plays out of the pocket, using his legs to throw it down the field or running. But I do think, yeah, this could be one of those games where,
Mhm.
he clears 40, 50 yards rushing pretty easily.
What aspect of this Cardinals defense scares you the most?
It was funny. I was like thinking about this, and there isn't a whole lot, but I think the
Mhm.
safeties, right? I
Yeah.
think the addition of DTD, I know you love in
Safety
the
one,
draft
baby.
process, safety one. I was just really quick looking at he had one game last year with 25 attempts, and in the Dallas game, he had 15 attempts. And then
So
the Chargers game, he had 21 attempts. So he only had technically 2 games where he was under 25. Anyway, yeah, the safeties, I think on the Cardinals defense, like you mentioned, the 3 safety looks, I think that if
mhm.
there's one area of this Cardinals defense where you're like, okay, could they get something where Josh isn't expecting it? Maybe it's something where they're rotating this 3 safety look. They did add DTD. I think Budda Baker's probably their best player defensively, and he's like their playmaker,
Mhm.
their heart and soul of the defense. He's like their emotional leader as well, kind of akin to how we used to talk about Tyrann Mathieu when the Bills were playing the Chiefs. It's like, don't give that Cardinals defense an emotional uplift early in
Mhm.
this game, right? Don't give them something to get fired up about. And if it's someone like Budda Baker that gets fired up, that can really, jolt that Cardinals
Mhm.
defense into maybe playing above what they really should be playing
Yeah.
capabilities wise. So to me, it's the safeties. I don't want Budda Baker to make a big play to give that team a jolt, an emotional jolt on the road that they will need in this
Yeah.
game to kind of get themselves where they want to be. So that's where I would say, don't give them something cheap. Don't throw a bad pick to the safeties.
Mhm.
To me, that's where I would try to maybe avoid. And is the one area I'd say worries
Yeah.
me slightly.
I mean, Josh went out of his way in his weekly press conference to point out Budda Baker, and the playmaker that he is. Any other thoughts on the Buffalo Bills offense in this matchup against the Cardinals defense this week?
I would just say this, right? It's week 1. I Look, we all do it. I'm gonna
Mhm.
really try not to overreact to week 1. I really am. Like, if the Bills come out with a conservative game plan and they're running the ball and they're running it well, like, I'm gonna take that as a positive. I'm gonna say,
Mhm.
"Hey, look, this is like Joe Brady trying to establish maybe some foundations for the rest of the season." But uh, I guess the biggest thing is, like, outside of the running game is, let's see kind of like, at least in week 1, maybe we're not gonna glean too much from it on what it means going forward, but I'm curious to see how the new pieces get used,
Mhm.
Samuel and Coleman especially. I'm gonna be paying attention to that, seeing how those guys integrate.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye out for Connor McGovern at center today too, and his chemistry with Josh Allen. We saw in a very negative way the loss of the center had on the Philadelphia Eagles in Brazil on Friday with that bad snap between Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts. The Eagles ultimately ended up winning that football game, but that's something just to keep in mind and keep an eye on today is that chemistry between McGovern and Josh Allen. All right, let's transition now to the Buffalo Bills defense and how they match up versus this Arizona Cardinals offense. Injuries, they've sort of opened the door for 2 surprise starters this season in Dorian Williams and Damar Hamlin. Their long-term status as starters, though, to me, seems questionable as they
Yep.
have to be, I think, rock solid on the field today and in coming weeks to maintain their spots. Do you agree with that statement that Williams and Hamlin, they are still interviewing for this job? It is not set in stone that they will be the starters at those 2 positions.
I do agree to that to some extent. I do think
Mhm.
that the safety position was one we talked a lot about during the offseason. The Bills made the investment in Cole Bishop. They made the sort of conscious effort to bring Taylor Rapp back very early in free agency, signing Mike Edwards. it's a full turnover of that position outside of Damar Hamlin, essentially, right? I mean, I know you still have kind of Cam Lewis who can do a little bit of everything, but this is going to be, I think, a trial by fire with the Bills at safety, right? I think right now, given the health situation, Edwards and Bishop coming back from injuries, the Bills are going to say, look, Hamlin and Rapp, you've kind of been our healthiest safeties throughout camp. You're going to get first crack at it. You are the two veterans of the team, right? You're the two that have been with the team previously. So we're going to kind of put our trust into you for this opening game and see how things go. I think it'll be fairly fluid because I do think the Bills will want to get Cole Bishop on the field. And look, you signed Mike Edwards to that 1-year deal. Like there's a good chance he's not going to be back for beyond this year. So you might as well use him for what you signed him for as that kind of more of a center fielding type safety. So I think that's going to be fluid. I do think Rapp's going to be a mainstay, but I think Hamlin could be interesting. He has played well throughout camp by all reports, so we'll see if he can kind of hold on that. Dorian Williams is the one that's, I think, I think he has a chance, maybe more so than Hamlin, to kind of cement himself if he can kind of clear up some of the mental and the instinctual sort of, coverage stuff that has been a problem for him. We know athletically, there's not really anyone better at the linebacking position that the Bills have than him. So for him, it's going to be about the mentals and about the coverage. And if the Bills feel like he's getting worked in coverage too much, then you could see him come off the field. But they do have Morrow, right? A veteran who they liked, who they, has come from a system that Sean McDermott's going to be pretty comfortable with. And, they also like Spector and Ulo, but I don't expect those guys to, Spector coming back from his injury, Ulo being a rookie. Like to me, Williams, I think, if you're going to ask me, like, who has a more cemented kind of hold on their spot right now, I'd actually have to say it's Dorian Williams, to be honest. And it's going to sound weird because Hamlin has kind of been the talk of a lot of topic lately, but I'll say Williams.
Great comment here from Jessica. She said, hey, Terrell Bernard was a question mark last year, and after week 1, he was no longer a question mark. So again, it's going to be really interesting to see who progressed this offseason, who took that next step, and who's ready to cement themselves in this role, right? Dorian Williams, if he's ready, that's going to be great, especially for the Bills now and the Bills in the future. But there are guys like Nicholas Morrow and Balon Spector behind him, and then Damar Hamlin again. If he cements that role, that's great, especially given his youth. But you also have second-round pick Cole Bishop getting healthy and behind him, and you have the veteran Mike Edwards, plus Micah Hyde sitting in the parking lot as well, too, as a possible, guy to fill that role. So it's going to be really interesting to see who can step up into these spots. Dorian Williams, to me, he's not really a concern with his run fit, and the Cardinals are probably going to run the ball a ton today with guys like James Conner. But as you sort of alluded to in pass coverage, he has issues dropping into coverage. That's pretty much why he was not on the field last year when the Buffalo Bills had their rash of linebacker injuries. If the Cardinals like to go heavy, so it's likely going to force Dorian Williams to stay on the field. We're probably not going to see as much of that dime package that we've seen from the Buffalo Bills with Milano out in years previous. I'm not really concerned with Dorian Williams in the run game, but slowing down guys like Trey McBride and James Conner in the passing game, that's going to be a difficult task for Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard, and the entire Bills defense.
Yeah, I think Trey McBride is the one that scares me. I think, James Conner, he's an underrated running back in the NFL, I would say. Like, people don't appreciate sort of his abilities. I think, like, he gets labeled as injury prone. Meanwhile, the guy's played in at least 13 games, 4 straight years. Like, he gets labeled as a power guy. Meanwhile, he catches passes out of the backfield, pretty effectively. Another 1,000-yard season from him last year with really not a whole lot of help complimentary wise behind him. Like, this year they've got Trey Benson to kind of compliment him, but last year he didn't have a ton of help. So Trey McBride is the one that worries me because the Bills, at times in the past have kind of struggled against some of these athletic tight ends. We saw what happened in the playoff game. Kelsey obviously is tough. You can't compare really him to everyone else because he's in a league of his own, but like this is a problem area for the Bills defense and has been for at spots in time, right? Without Milano, especially. So to me, I worry about Dorian Williams in coverage against Trey McBride. I wonder if they'll kind of maybe try to help with him a little bit. Maybe they'll use a little bit more Taylor Rapp kind of in that situation. And then Kyler Murray breaking the pocket and
Mhm.
ad-libbing and running also is a concern for me for a guy like Dorian Williams who, yes, he's athletic and, he's good in his run fits, but I think the misdirection element, I think, is
Yeah.
what scares me a bit with him if Kyler gets out of the pocket. So it's a big concern. And I think
Mhm.
the Cardinals don't have a ton of um there's not a ton of people thinking the Cardinals are gonna do a lot of damage in this game, but Trey
Mhm.
McBride is certainly someone I would worry
Yeah.
about. And it's a good
And
candidate for a respect you player today.
and Drew Petzig, their offensive coordinator, is a really good young offensive mind. He's really good at drawing up that underneath stuff, and Kyler's really good at taking that underneath stuff too. So the Buffalo Bills linebackers, safeties, they're going to have their head on a swivel today. Somebody mentioned in the comment section. Let me scroll back up here. The key to the game, Carl Thoman comes in and says, just rush four, don't blitz. Try to get pressure with four. I know that puts a lot of pressure on your edge rushers, guys like Ed Oliver, but you really want these guys dropping back. You really want these guys keeping the plays in front of them,
Yep.
being able to see the whole field and go sideline to sideline to be able to adequately adjust to these misdirections and to be able to keep these guys in front of them and tackle them, etc. So a tall task for the Buffalo Bills defense today, especially considering the mystery bag that is week one. You really don't know what your opponents are going to throw at you. You really have nothing to game plan for except for previous years tape because you're really not seeing much in the preseason. When the Buffalo Bills do get the Cardinals into obvious passing situations today,
Mhm.
expect to possibly see a return of the dime package that the Buffalo Bills utilized so much with Matt Milano out with an injury last year. However, you mentioned it. There's just that huge turnover in the safety room. Taylor Rapp, who was that dime backer last year, is now your starting strong safety. So who's going to fill that dime backer role for the Buffalo Bills this week? And is it the same as the guy who's going to cover it maybe over the course of the season in totality? The two biggest candidates right now being Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards.
My heart wants Cole Bishop to
Mm-hmm.
see the field as early as possible in his career. And look, he was out of the red non-contact jersey. He's not on the injury report. Like, it certainly gives the appearance that the Bills were being extra cautious with him leading up to week one. They went with Hamlin and Rapp as the starters, I think, as like a nod to them. But like, man, I would love to
Mm-hmm.
see Cole Bishop on the field early in that role. Um, it's hard for me to say right now because Mike Edwards missed most of camp with that
Yeah.
hamstring injury, even though he is a veteran. Like, which direction do the Bills go here? Like, I think it's kind of a coin flip for me
Yeah.
right now. Hard to predict. My heart wants to see Bishop, and maybe the Bills will lean that way given the draft capital they invested in him.
It's going to be really interesting to see where they go. Like, I would not be surprising to me if this week, even though he missed all of spring and all of summer, if it was Mike Edwards, just because he's a
Yep.
veteran and
Yep.
because he played that dime backer role so well in Kansas City. Like,
Yep.
he literally did that role for Spags last year. But eventually, I think it has to be Cole Bishop. And one of the things that I like about Cole Bishop, despite his short arms and only 29 inches, is the fact that I really do think that Cole Bishop really does have a feel for the line of scrimmage,
Yep.
and he's really athletic.
Yep.
And he seems like it really sucks that he missed most of the summer. And because I'm not even talking about his role as a starting safety, which I think is his future, obviously here in Buffalo, but just as sort of like a star defender, a movable chess piece, like a pseudo linebacker / safety, that dime backer that we're talking about here. I think Cole Bishop, outside of the short arms, like fits everything you want from that perspective to a T. So to
Mhm.
me, being able to weaponize a guy like Cole Bishop this week would have been awesome. I just don't know how much you can do it with how much time he missed this summer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I mean, you start kind of looking at the Cardinals offensively,
Mhm.
fourth most, like I mentioned earlier, fourth most fourth down attempts in the league last year. So I think there's going to be a lot of situations where the Bills might be in those looks, third and fourth downs.
Mhm.
There's going to be some high pressure situations. And so where do the Bills show their trust in week 1 in these high pressure situations, especially on 4th downs, because I expect the Cardinals to kind of lay it all out there in week 1. It sounds weird to say that, but like the Cardinals have really nothing to lose, right? There's not a lot of expectation on them going on the road to the East Coast. No one's really thinking they're going to do much. A ton of new faces. Statistically, they're so bad last year. So like there's going to be a lot of, I think, high pressure situations in the sense that like a lot of 4th down potential stops are going to be in the cards for the Cards, funny enough. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I kind of see where you're going with that, but I do think the long term should be Bishop.
What are your biggest concerns about this Cardinals offense? Like, what do they do that scare you?
I will say my biggest concerns, we mentioned Trey McBride, and that's a concern, but my biggest concern is really this Cardinals rushing attack, right? They were 4th in the NFL in rushing last year. I mentioned earlier, James Conner didn't have a ton of help last year. Kyler Murray only played 8 games last year, and they were still 4th in the NFL in rushing, and we know how much he runs the ball or can run the ball out of that position. So they go out and they draft Trey Benson, speed. They add Marvin Harrison Jr. to kind of stretch the field. They've got Trey McBride. So I feel like the Bills are going to have to really be good against the run today. Kyler Murray, James Conner, even a little mix of Trey Benson probably today. You're going to see, I think the Cardinals are going to look at where they could take advantage of the Bills, and they're going to say, look, the Bills at times last year could be run on, right? And at times this like sort of aggressive downhill defense of the Bills stylistically is that going to be something we see continue with Bobby Babich? It certainly looks like it will be. So will the Cardinals have an advantage in the running game? I could see them being fairly effective in the running game. It's a really big game for the Bills front 4, especially Ed Oliver, right? In the middle, Ed Oliver and Daquan, like they're going to have really good games. So for me, we talked about Trey McBride, but I would be very concerned, or my biggest concern, I would say, is this Cardinals rushing attack beyond just James Conner, but also Kyler Murray and a mix of Trey Benson who can get out and really get away from the defense. And so the Bills really going to have to be good tackling today.
Carmen P comes in and says 210 watching, only 13 likes. Show the love, chat. Yeah, likes go a long way helping us with the algorithm. So if you guys could take the time to smash that like button, we would really appreciate it. Luna 13 comes in and says, do you think they could put Bishop on tight ends? And Carl Thoman comes in with a super chat. I always appreciate you, Carl. He says Bishop and Edwards missed time. How is Cam Lewis utilized? Yeah, I think the dime backer spot that we just talked about is going to be a huge question mark. Maybe Cam Lewis is the guy they bring in that situation early on, because he's been in camp and he has been working. And Cole Bishop, one of the reasons the Buffalo Bills said they drafted him was because of the fits that he gave Dalton Kincaid in practice. So again, despite those short arms, he gave a guy like Dalton Kincaid, a player of his caliber, a really hard time in practice there at Utah. So that is maybe something that, again, I'd be surprised if we see it because he missed so much practice time. But then again, never mind, Buffalo Bills, we're just going to go out there and we're going to utilize him, that skill set. We've been planning for that skill set. We've got that skill set. We want to use that skill set. Practice time be damned. We're going to throw him out there and we're going to do it.
I mean, I will say this, right? From years past, like Bobby Babich definitely seems like the guy that would do something like that compared to like a Leslie Frazier in the past, right? Where you would think like he would. So like just stylistically, they just seem like Babich, the younger guy. Maybe he plays the younger guy. Frazier, the old vet, goes with the vet.
So it's so nice not to have like two scoops of vanilla ice cream as your coordinators. Like it's just really, it's a nice change of pace to have just a little bit of edge there. I mean, to me, you mentioned it with James Conner, them being able to dictate the pace of play, keep their offense on the field. Kyler's variance, the big plays with his legs. Just Rousseau and Oliver need to lead the way today, slowing down Kyler's variance and James Conner. Back to the Trey McBride stuff, though. Like last year with Matt Milano, over the middle of the field, opponents averaged 6.7 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, and the Bills had 5 picks. Without Matt Milano, opposing offenses had 7.2 yards per attempt over the middle of the field, 7 touchdowns, and the Bills had 0 interceptions. So, yeah, whatever it is that went wrong last year without Matt Milano, we got to fix that with Trey McBride coming in week 1. There's obviously that mystery bag element, I think, to the rookie Marvin Harrison Jr., who we haven't even talked about, and we're 40 minutes into this show. And honestly, he really hasn't even crossed my mind this week, just because the strength of that Cardinals offense is probably matches up really well with the weaknesses or perceived weaknesses of this Buffalo Bills defense. So I think we're lucky that Kyler and Marvin Harrison haven't had a chance to play in like real live games together yet and build some of that chemistry in games. And I really haven't thought about the, number 3 overall pick in this year, number 4 overall pick in this year's draft too much. But that could very well change in a hurry today.
Hey, I mean, the Cardinals, to their Marvin Harrison Jr., they needed to get that guy to replace like the aging DeAndre from a couple years ago, right? They went out and they drafted Harrison 4th overall. Michael Wilson's a good player for them, doesn't get talked about enough as a guy who can really move the chains for them. And then they still have Greg Dortch, who was like a cult favorite last year from when so like they have guys plus Trey McBride. It's not like the cupboard's bare for the Cardinals. There's just a lot of unknown, right? And I think it wouldn't surprise me if Marvin Harrison Jr. made a big play or two in today's game, but you really got to try to limit that. The Bills were really good at limiting big plays down the field last year, and that is something that Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr. are expected to do for this Cardinals offense throughout this season. So the Bills just got to try to not let that happen in week 1.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is about that time, not to end the show, but for all of those who are familiar with the Buffalo Bills pregame show here at Cover One with the Air Raid Hour, we are about to take you into sort of an immersive experience with our pregame superlatives. And we also have a guest picker, and we will have a guest picker every week here for our pregame superlatives, our sort of homage to College Game Day. So I'm going to bring on our guest picker in a moment. But first, we got some fancy new graphics this year, courtesy of Dave. And here it is, our guest picker for this week, Cover One Zone, Joe DeRosa, host of the Under Review podcast every Tuesday night here on the Cover One Sports Network. How you doing today, Joe?
Doing great, gentlemen. Thank you for having me here. Excited for football. This is the best day of the year. I'm so pumped up. It's the reason I was able to wake up early on a Sunday. I love it. Let's go.
Awesome. And we got Aaron Quinn in the comment section here saying just finished up his breakfast sandwiches, so he is ready to go. Yes, I do need a coffee stat. I've already had my, one Red Bull this morning because it is 6:15 right now my time, so I'm struggling a little bit. And Greg Tomset comes in and says, "LFG, we made it to the real football, baby." So here on the Air Raid Hour pregame show every week, we have our pregame superlatives. We go through 5 superlatives, things that we are expecting from the weekly matchup. In this case, this week, the Buffalo Bills versus the Arizona Cardinals. And as always, we're starting with our first pregame superlative. That is right. The Take Me Higher player of the game. Joe, I'm going to start with you. Who is the one Buffalo Bills player that needs to take us higher this week?
Oh, well, I think that the Bills, and one of the keys I had to them winning this game is leaning on the rush. And I think I got to go with James Cook. I think James Cook is going to be a focal point of how this team functions today, both out of the backfield, whether it's as runner, whether they're throwing to him. I really think that using him and exploiting Arizona, what I think will be still a subpar rushing defense, is how you're going to, take control of the game, take control of the clock, be explosive, be able to shorten the field a bit for Josh, but also keep Kyler and those skill groups off the field, because if we're so concerned about their tight ends and so concerned about their rushing attack, the best way to really defend against them is to keep them off the field. So I think James Cook and really that rushing attack is what I expect to be the shining star for the Bills out today.
Look at that. Joe joins our show for the first time and already stealing my thunder because I had James Cook as well. My prediction for James Cook in this game is 150 all-purpose yards, whether it's running the ball, and I think he'll get involved a little bit in the passing game today as well, and a touchdown. He is also my take me higher player of the game. But I also do think it's more of a commentary on the Buffalo Bills offensive line today and how I think they are going to get it done up front. Dave, who is your take me higher player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, James Cook's a great pick. I expect the Bills to be able to hopefully move the ball on the ground pretty efficiently. I'll go with the guy that can really take advantage of the other weakness of the Cardinals, which was their inability to get to the passer and their worst third down defense conversion wise, percentage wise in the NFL last year. So give me the chain mover, Dalton Kincaid, the ace of, it's apparently going to be or should be the ace of this Bills offense receiving wise this year, should lead the team in targets. We all expect that to be the case. So give me Dalton Kincaid, kind of maybe keeping him under wraps throughout camp, keeping him under wraps in the preseason. And like today's a good day to unleash him, kind of show that efficiency that the Bills offense can have against this Cardinals defense, keep those chains moving, convert those third downs. The guy that was second on the team in targets last year behind Diggs has the trust of Josh Allen. Give me Dalton Kincaid as the take me higher player today.
I like it. We're all going on the offensive end. It's week 1. We haven't busted out the defensive picks yet. Our next superlative here is going to be our wild card player of the game. All right, bitches. Joe, I'll start with you. Who's your wild card player of the game? We can't use the actual clip from It's Always Sunny, or else we don't make any money off of this pregame show. So I gotta drop the B word myself. Sorry, gotta do it.
Totally understand. Honestly, it sounds really good coming from you. I think it's better that way. My wildcard player of the player of the game, I'm gonna stay on offense. I'm gonna go with someone who I feel is becoming a bit too underrated for my liking, and it's Dawson Knox. I think Dawson Knox is going to be an integral part of both. Like I said before, the Bills leaning on their running game in their 12 personnel packages or as just a blocker in general, but also as a functional receiver. And I feel like there's been some kind of overlooking of Dawson Knox just because Kincaid gets drafted, 11P, he's shining, probably going to be a focal point. And I understand, how much of an emphasis he'll have. Dawson Knox, to me, man, is still a great tight end. I think one of the top, if you even want to call him a TE2 in this league right now, one of the top TE2s in the league. And I think he's going to have some favorable matchups today, especially if the Bills are throwing at us some of those run looks like we hope they do, to a point where he probably gets matched up on someone either just not athletic enough to keep up with him or undersized and makes some noise, especially in the red zone. I really think that if they're throwing the ball around, Dawson Knox is still going to be a meaningful target in this offense, and people should really look his way more often. So I'm going to choose him.
Dave, where are you heading this week with your wild card player of the game?
Yeah, I like that pick from Joe. And you kind of look at the teams that have played already this week. They, between Kelsey and Noah Gray and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, like a lot of these really good teams have 2 very usable tight ends on their team, and the Bills should be one of those teams this year. I'm going to go with the guy we mentioned when we were talking about the Bills defense, and this could be a wild card for the good or for the bad, and that's Dorian Williams on defense. I'll go with the first defensive player in the superlatives for the year. Dorian Williams, he's got a big opportunity today because I think he's going to have the opportunity to show whether he can be a guy that can be trusted in pass coverage, and he's going to have that chance to shine where he should shine in fitting those runs, because I do expect a heavy dose of James Conner and that Cardinals rushing attack today. So this could go very well, or this could go maybe not so well for a guy like Dorian Williams. But I do think by the definition, he is a wild card for the Bills today in this game, and potentially could have a pretty big impact on the outcome of the game, good or bad, depending on his play. So give me Dorian Williams. A lot of pressure on him, filling in for Milano. Hope he has a good game, but he is a wild card for today.
That's a good one. And a couple of good ones from the comment section as well. I got Roy Collins coming in here and says Groot with 2 sacks is your wild card player of the game. Tim comes in and says Ray Davis will establish himself as a key weapon. Ariola Grande comes in and says wild card player. Because I got to say what's on the screen. I can't not do it.
You can't.
I tell you, you can't not. Turns out Dwayne Carter was a decent soccer player and takes over Bass after he misses a field goal and extra point, goes on to drill 260+ yarders. That would certainly
be something. That's more of a hot take, I'd say, than a wild card.
All right.
But Dwayne Carter, that's an interesting name to see how he steps up in that rotation today. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go a little off script here. Like I don't think I've ever done this for a wild card player of the game. I'm gonna go with the big ugly. I'm gonna go with an offensive lineman here. I'm gonna go the newly extended Spencer Brown. New 4-year contract. We still don't have the contract numbers here. But when this game is over, I think people will be pointing to some of the blocks and some of the impact that he had in the running game, in the passing game as a key to the Buffalo Bills' success. So I'm going to go Spencer Brown here as my wild card player of the game. And just the tip of canoe comes in and says Reggie Gilliam forces
nice
a football on a kickoff. So that's a nice one. Kebby comes in, Ray Davis, 2 tutties. That would be that might be hot take material.
A lot of people love
a lot of Ray Davis love.
Yes, yeah. A lot of Ray Davis love. Yeah.
All right. Up next on our superlatives here is our respect you player of the game. Joe's really digging that music.
Yeah, I like that one.
Who is your
bossa nova type action?
If the Ron Burgundy, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was nice.
So, who is your respect you player of the game? A player from the Arizona Cardinals that the Bills just got to respect if they're going to win this football game.
Oh, man, it's going to sound cliche, but it's Kyler Murray. And I know that's probably the cop-out answer, but I think really so much of what makes this offense threatening is the extension of Kyler Murray and his mobility. Because when you talk about their rushing attack, it's already quite good. Their downhill running is very good. They have 2 capable backs, but the threat of Kyler Murray's legs open up so much more for that Arizona offense, whether you're talking about RPOs, play action, and all of the different threatening things they can do just by having him be someone who can rush and someone that is hard to contain and someone that is hard to bring down. Again, it's just, if you were facing a more statue type of pocket passer, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about this Bills D-line hitting home with 4-man pressures, but Murray is an exception. He's someone who's really bitten them in the butt in the past, and I have a lot of concerns over how the offense stems from that threat, so I'm going to go with him.
Dave, how about you? Who's your respect you player of the game?
Yeah, I could go a number of ways here. You know, I like James Conner as a respect you player. I like Budda Baker even, but I'm going to go with Trey McBride because I just feel like, look, the big draft pick of Marvin Harrison Jr., we know the Cardinals are going to try to get the ball to him. That's not a secret, but like Trey McBride now, especially like in fantasy football circles and like other, like there's a big breakout expected for him this year, potentially as maybe the Cardinals' number 1 option in the passing game, similar to how the Bills maybe expect Dalton Kincaid to be the number 1 option in the passing game. You know, they drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., but I don't know that Marvin Harrison's going to lead this team in targets. It very well could be Trey McBride, and kind of goes along with my wild card and Dorian Williams. And it's like, how are the Bills going to defend Trey McBride? They struggled, you know, without solid linebacking coverage in games where Milano was not there for them against good tight ends. Trey McBride is an up-and-coming star in this league at the tight end position. So, you know, I'm going to have to say Trey McBride because he could really make like things miserable for the Bills today. I like Budda Baker as well, as Roy said.
Yeah, Carl Tolman comes in, with, you know, same as you, says, respect you player of the game is Trey McBride. Roy Collins says Budda Baker. Spin 0481 coming in saying respect you player from the Cardinals is nobody. Bills are a better team. They just need to dominate this game and get the season off to the right side. I can't say I disagree, but I do think the Cardinals are on the come up. I think they're a really good team, and I think they have some really good foundational pieces. I'm going to go with Budda Baker here. Budda Baker's always been a personal favorite of mine, living out here in Arizona, getting to watch Budda Baker, just the way he carries himself. I think if anyone watched that in-season Hard Knocks, he was the only person, the only likable person on that football team, the back half of that season there on Hard Knocks. He's just an awesome dude. He's an awesome player. Josh Allen went out of his way to make sure he complimented him in his pregame press conference this week. They love those 3 safety looks. They love just putting Budda Baker in a position to make plays. And if Josh Allen isn't careful, Budda Baker will make those plays. And, you know, this game can be real close, real quick if you allow a guy like Budda Baker to set the tone for that Arizona Cardinals defense. All right, now our fire sale, our hottest take. Sorry, it's the first game, so I'm still a little bit. I haven't even moved the camera over, so like a little bit of a first pregame show back. But next, the next superlative we have here is our hot take. All right, Joe, what is your, and it's got to be spicy. You can't come on here and just have some like medium sauced take.
Right.
You need to have a spicy hot take here. Our fire sale hottest take of the game. What do you got for us?
I don't know if this is going to be the hottest take because I don't know what your hot degree is. You know, everyone can tolerate different levels of spice. I don't know what your spice tolerance is. So I'll say this. I think the leading receiver today is a running back, and I think it will be James Cook. I think there is a possibility that they are going to throw his way often. I think Joe Brady leaned on him heavily in the second half last year. Despite the drops, I think the Bills still love James Cook and want to use the hands. And I think there is a possibility that the person who leads in receptions and yards is a running back named James Cook. So that is going to be my hot take. I hope that was hot enough for you guys as I guessed here for the first time.
I think that's pretty spicy on a team that loves to pass the football, saying a running back is going to be the leading receiver. I think that's spicy. Nabil comes in and says Cole Bishop's going to rotate in to cover Trey McBride on passing downs. Spin always coming in with his great hot takes. He says Bass is going to make a field goal.
Sarcastic hot takes from Spin are so good.
Roy Collins, Tyler Bass, 250 plus yarders in the win today. That would be interesting. And then the teams combine for 350 rushing yards, says Chiefs Orly. So yeah, I mean, maybe expect a heavy dose of the ground game. But Dave, what are your thoughts? What are your hot takes this week?
My hot take for this game is that on the receiving side for both teams, the only position that will score receiving touchdowns will be tight ends. That's my hot take for today. So
I could see that.
It's either Knox, Kincaid, McBride. Like the only receiving touchdowns that will happen in this game will come from tight ends for both teams. That's my hot take.
I like that. I think this one might be the spiciest of the three, but the people in the comment section, you can be the judge. I say the Bills go over 200 yards on the ground as a team today. I think that they are not going to fully weaponize Josh Allen in the ground, but I think they will allow Josh Allen to run the ball. I think we saw this offense needs a little bit of Josh Allen in the ground game to just function, and for Josh, quite frankly, to function. So I think you're not going to see that sort of leash that the Buffalo Bills had on him early last season. I think you can expect 30, 40 yards out of Josh Allen today. I think you'll get a heavy dose of James Cook. I think you'll see a lot of Ty Johnson and Ray Davis as a team, maybe even Curtis Samuel too, right? Talking about like some of those ways to get the balls into the receivers' hands in the run game as well. I'm going to go 200 all-purpose yards for the Buffalo, or not all-purpose, but 200 yards on the ground for the Buffalo Bills as a team today. All right, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, to go back to the future with our pre-game predictions. All right, Joe, lead things off for us here. Paint a picture for us. How are the Buffalo Bills going to look in today's home opener?
Well, first I want to say I was expecting the Back to the Future graphic to be like more like, you know, Back to the Future aesthetics with like electricity and stuff. But I don't know if that would also get you guys demonetized. So I respect the choice. Like I said earlier, rush heavy. I really think that this front seven for Arizona is still a work in progress. I know we've talked about some of the additions that they've made on that end, but it just doesn't feel like a complete nor threatening enough unit for me to think that you can't run on them. And I think that the Bills have really tried to construct this offense where rushing is going to be a very serious focal point for them that they could pivot to in matchups like this. Because even if you don't think Arizona is the strongest team, there are playmakers in that secondary. We've talked about Buda Baker 100 times because he's that good and he's that threatening. They've made some nice additions in their cornerback room. They added in Rabbit Taylor Demerson. That's what Bo was calling him, and I love that nickname. Like, they are a team that you can pass on, but I feel far more comfortable with just beating them up in the trenches. So for me, I think that is the concerted game plan for Joe Brady and this offense and Josh Allen, is to attack them, whether it's in the middle, whether it's to pull their tackles again, whether it's to go outside, run the hell out of that ball, and also open things up for a Josh Allen that might get shorter downs and distances. And I also think that there's a possibility that by doing so, a lot of time goes off and we might see a pretty quick game that doesn't actually end up as high scoring as we may believe. So that's really how I see this offense going. And as for defense, you know, I think Sean McDermott's done a good job against quarterbacks, you know, that have a rushing profile. I know at least in parts of that Eagles game, he was doing fine, but obviously the injuries kind of led to it kind of falling apart. But I think about times they've matched up against Lamar Jackson and how they've actually been able to contain him quite well and really force him into situations where he has to see the field and there's good downfield coverage. It's going to be a little tricky with the safety situation, but I do think that Sean McDermott can contain Kyler Murray. It is possible. And as long as they're able to stop those running backs, I think they have a good chance. So for me, I predict the Bills to run the hell out of it and probably put up something in the periphery of like 24 to 27 points and win that way.
Nice. I like it, Dave. How about you? Paint a picture for us. How do you think the Buffalo Bills are going to do today?
Well, one of our superlatives is the wild card, and a lot of times the wild card is week one of what Bills team shows up. Seems to kind of alternate years, like which Bills team shows up. We had last year kind of the dud against the Jets. The year before, good opener against the Rams. The year before that, the terrible opener against the Steelers. So like which Bills team shows up in week one? The matchup is prime for the Bills to be able to be efficient on offense, but I wonder if that offsets a little with just them trying to get, get in a groove with new faces and trying to, like Joe said, establish the run and try to figure things out, kind of like how this is going to work against a team where they should be able to try these things out and see if it's going to work. So I do think I agree generally that it might be lower scoring than people think. I actually think both defenses are going to struggle a little bit in this game, including the Bills defense. I think the Cardinals are going to be able to move the ball a bit on the Bills through that rushing attack, with Kyler being kind of the X factor. I think it's a closer game than people maybe think. I do think the Bills have enough firepower on offense, and the Cardinals defense isn't quite good enough to hang with the Bills the entire day. And then obviously Josh Allen's X factor as well with his legs. So I think the Bills end up winning by a touchdown. I think they're favored by 6.5. I think they barely cover that. I think they win by 7. I think it's Bills 27, Cardinals 20.
Nice. I like that. Aaron Quinn comes in and says the views to likes ratio needs to get bumped up here, folks. Smash that like. Always appreciate it if you just hit that like button for us. Helps us with the algorithm. I know there's a couple hours between the end of this show and the start of the Buffalo Bills game, so really helps us get a bunch of more eyeballs onto this show before kickoff. And Aaron says, if you don't hit that like button, the Bills are going to lose, and it's your fault. So Aaron's a smart guy. Listen to Aaron when he says that.
Guilt tripping the viewers. Nice.
I think that in this game, both teams are going to keep the ball on the ground a ton. And I think that they're both going to look to control the clock. So I think the score is going to be a little bit lower than people think because of that. So my final score prediction is going to be 23-17 Bills. And here's the kicker. We knocked down a Kyler Murray Hail Mary attempt in the end zone to steal the win. There we go. Got to bring it full circle here. So that should just about do it here for us on the Air Raid Hour this morning. Again, if you are a big fan of this show, just simply hit that like button. We'd also really appreciate if you click that little share button, text or email the link to family, friends, people you think would enjoy watching this before kickoff at 1 p.m. And Joe, thank you for joining us, and tell the people where they can find your show.
Well, first off, thank you both for having me. It's very exciting to be here with the Bills guys. I love coming on the show anytime I can. My name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter at Joe_DeRosa, and my show is on every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. This week, I will have the one and only Bruce Nolan joining me, as the two of us are going to review the Cardinals game and move ahead to the upcoming Miami game with the quick turnaround. So I hope you can all check that out. But otherwise, that's it for me. And guys, thank you again. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for joining us, and you can catch us here at the Air Raid Hour tomorrow night, 9 p.m., as we break down all things Bills, Cardinals. Hopefully, Dave, it's a victory Monday and not a week one therapy session. Don't forget the Cover One post-game show is live tonight as well, following the game. So you're not going to want to miss out on Greg and Aaron's analysis. So thank you guys so much. Bills Mafia, get your blue lights, your Picasso's pizza, and your wings ready. Prepare yourself for the anxiety that is Buffalo Bills football. And Joe, I don't know if you've ever seen the end of the show, but we always end it with a Go Bills. So until next time, Joe, we're going to let you lead these things off after me here. Until next time, Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, Go Bills!